Before we jump into today's story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Now let's begin. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Madison Hayes stepped inside, her arms overloaded with a cardboard box stuffed with personal belongings. A wilted desk plant, a coffee-stained planner, 3 broken pens, and a framed photo of her cat, Mr. Whiskers. She'd just been laid off from Carter Media, a mid-tier marketing firm where she'd spent 2 grueling years writing copy that no one read and attending meetings that could have been emails. The company was downsizing, they said. Budget cuts, they explained. But Madison knew the truth. Her boss never liked her. Too opinionated, too unwilling to nod and smile when terrible ideas were pitched as genius strategies. So here she was, jobless on a Tuesday afternoon, riding the elevator down from the 14th floor with a box of meaningless office debris and a bruised ego. She jabbed the button for the ground floor and leaned against the wall, letting out a long, exhausted sigh. The elevator descended smoothly, the digital numbers ticking down. 13, 12, 11. Then, without warning, the elevator jolted to a stop. Madison stumbled, nearly dropping the box. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. The digital display froze on the number 9. Great. Just perfect, she muttered under her breath, setting the box down on the floor and pressing the door open button. Nothing. She pressed it again. Still nothing. Her stomach twisted with irritation. Of all the days for this to happen. She glanced up at the emergency call button, contemplating whether to press it, when the elevator gave another small lurch and the door slid open. Relief washed over her until she saw who was standing in the hallway. A man, tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her rent, with dark hair swept back and sharp, piercing blue eyes that looked like they could dissect a person's soul in 3 seconds flat. He held a phone to his ear, speaking in a clipped, authoritative tone. Yes, I need the revised projections by end of day. No excuses. If the team can't deliver, replace them. He stepped into the elevator without so much as a glance at Madison, still talking as if she were invisible. Madison pressed herself into the corner, clutching her box, feeling like a rumpled mess next to this walking embodiment of corporate perfection. The doors closed. The elevator resumed its descent. The man continued his call, his voice cold and commanding. I don't care if it's inconvenient. Results matter, not feelings. Make it happen. Madison rolled her eyes. Of course, another one of those types. The kind of executive who thought the world revolved around him, who treated people like chess pieces, who probably had an assistant whose sole job was to fetch his overpriced lattes. She couldn't help herself. Under her breath, just loud enough to be audible, she muttered, "Arrogant." The man's head turned slightly. His eyes, those icy blue eyes, flicked toward her for the briefest moment. Then he returned to his call as if she hadn't spoken. But Madison saw it. The tiniest twitch at the corner of his mouth. He'd heard her, her face flushed hot. Oh God. Why did I say that out loud? The elevator continued its descent in painful silence. 8. 7. 6. Madison stared at the floor, willing the numbers to move faster. The man ended his call and slipped his phone into his pocket. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on her like a weight. She risked a glance at him. He stood perfectly still, hands clasped in front of him, expression unreadable. Then, just as the elevator reached the 3rd floor, he spoke. His voice was smooth, controlled, but edged with something that might have been amusement. Arrogant. Interesting choice of word. Madison's heart slammed against her ribs. He was talking to her. "You have something to say?" he continued, not looking at her, but clearly addressing her. Madison swallowed hard. Her instinct was to apologize, to backpedal, to smooth things over. But she'd just lost her job for refusing to shrink herself, and she was tired. So tired. She lifted her chin. Just an observation. He turned fully toward her now, and the full weight of his attention was almost unbearable. Blue eyes, sharp as glass, scanned her face. An observation. Based on a 30-second elevator ride. You must be incredibly perceptive. His tone was dry, skeptical. Madison's pulse raced, but she didn't back down. Or maybe you're just incredibly predictable. One eyebrow arched. Predictable. She gestured vaguely toward him, box still balanced awkwardly in her arms. The suit, the phone call, the I don't care about feelings, just get it done attitude. It's a type, and let me guess. You've encountered this type before. All the time, Madison said flatly. They're everywhere. Boardrooms, corner offices, elevators. The man's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who found the situation mildly entertaining, like watching a kitten hiss at a tiger. And what type are you? Madison blinked. What? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Cardboard box, wilted plant. That look on your face like the world just knocked you down. Let me guess. Recently unemployed. Madison's cheeks burned. That's none of your business, he shrugged. You made an observation about me. I'm simply returning the favor. The elevator dinged. Ground floor. The doors slid open. The man stepped out first, pausing just outside to glance back at her. For what it's worth, he said, voice calm and measured. Arrogance and confidence are often confused. Perhaps you should learn the difference. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing across the marble lobby, leaving Madison standing in the elevator, fuming and flustered, and utterly speechless. She stepped out, box in hand, and muttered under her breath. Unbelievable. But as she pushed through the glass doors and into the bright afternoon sunlight, she couldn't shake the image of those blue eyes and that infuriating, knowing smile. Madison spent the rest of the day in her tiny apartment, stress-eating leftover takeout, and scrolling through job listings on her laptop. Every posting seemed to require 5 years of experience for entry-level pay, or demanded skills she didn't have, or was located in some far-flung suburb that would require a 2-hour commute. She closed the laptop with a frustrated snap and flopped back onto her couch. Mr. Whiskers, her orange tabby cat, leaped onto her stomach and began kneading her shirt with his paws. At least you still love me, she muttered, scratching behind his ears. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Chloe. Chloe, heard about Carter Media. You okay? Madison sighed and typed back. Madison, surviving. Jobless, but not hopeless. I think. Chloe, want to grab drinks tomorrow? My treat. Madison, yes, desperately. She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. The encounter in the elevator kept replaying in her mind. That man, his smug smile, his cutting words. Arrogance and confidence are often confused. Please, he was definitely arrogant. And yet, something about the way he'd looked at her, really looked at her, had made her pulse race in a way she didn't want to examine too closely. She shook her head. Forget him. You'll never see him again. The next morning, Madison woke to her phone ringing. She fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Unknown number, probably a scam call. She almost didn't answer, but at the last second, she swiped to accept. Hello? Is this Madison Hayes? A crisp, professional female voice asked. Yes, Madison said cautiously, sitting up in bed. This is Caroline Strutt, calling from Langford Enterprises. We received your resume and would like to schedule an interview for the executive assistant position. Madison froze. Langford Enterprises. She vaguely remembered applying to them late last night in a caffeine-fueled frenzy, but she hadn't expected a response so quickly. Langford was one of the biggest corporate empires in the city, a conglomerate involved in everything from real estate to tech startups. Landing a job there would be like winning the lottery. Yes. Absolutely. When? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. The address is in the email we just sent. Please bring copies of your resume and be prepared for a working interview. Madison's heart pounded. A working interview? What does that mean? It means you'll be tested on real tasks to assess your suitability for the role. Ms. Langford values competence above all else. Oh, okay. I'll be there. Excellent. We look forward to meeting you. The call ended. Madison stared at her phone, half convinced she'd imagined the whole thing. Then the email appeared in her inbox, official and formal, with the Langford Enterprises logo at the top. She let out a breathless laugh. Maybe her luck was finally turning around. The next morning, Madison stood in front of Langford Tower, a gleaming skyscraper of glass and steel that seemed to pierce the clouds. She wore her best interview outfit, a navy blue blazer and matching skirt, paired with heels that were already pinching her feet. Her resume was printed on expensive paper, tucked neatly into a leather portfolio her mom had given her for graduation. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, stepping through the revolving doors into the lobby. The interior was breathtaking. Polished marble floors, towering columns, a waterfall feature cascading down one wall. Everything screamed wealth and power. Madison approached the reception desk, her heels clicking against the floor. "Hi, I'm Madison Hayes. I have an interview at 9. The receptionist, a poised woman with sleek black hair, checked her computer and nodded. "Take the elevator to the 42nd floor. Someone will meet you there." Madison's stomach fluttered as she stepped into the elevator. The 42nd floor. That was nearly the top of the building. As the elevator climbed, she rehearsed answers to potential interview questions in her head. "Why do you want to work here? What are your strengths? How do you handle pressure?" The doors opened. Madison stepped out into a sleek, modern office space. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. A woman in a charcoal dress approached her, smiling politely. "Madison Hayes?" "Yes." "Follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with abstract art and glass-walled conference rooms. Madison's nerves tightened with every step. Finally, they stopped in front of a large oak door. The woman knocked once, then opened it. "Mr. Langford will see you now." Madison stepped inside, and her breath caught in her throat. Sitting behind a massive desk, reviewing a stack of documents, was the man from the elevator. The arrogant one. The one with the piercing blue eyes and the infuriating smile. He looked up. Their eyes met. For a long, terrible moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, deliberately, he leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Miss Hayes, what a pleasant surprise." Madison's face drained of color. "Oh, no. Oh, no. No, no." "You," she stammered. He folded his hands on the desk, looking entirely too pleased with himself. "Me. His name was Ethan Langford. Of course it was. The CEO of Langford Enterprises, the man she'd called arrogant to his face, and now, apparently, her potential boss. Madison wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. "Please," he said smoothly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Have a seat. We have a lot to discuss." Madison's legs felt like jelly as she crossed the room and lowered herself into the chair. Her mind raced, replaying every word she'd said in that elevator. Arrogant, predictable. It's a type. She wanted to crawl under the desk and hide. Ethan Langford watched her with an expression that was impossible to read. Amusement? Curiosity? Annoyance? Maybe all three. So, he began, tapping a finger against the folder on his desk, which he assumed contained her resume. Madison Hayes. Former copywriter at Carter Media. 2 years of experience. Strong references, despite the recent layoff. He looked up at her. "Tell me, Miss Hayes, why do you want to work here?" Madison's throat was dry. She tried to remember the polished answer she'd rehearsed, but her brain felt like static. I believe Langford Enterprises is a company that values innovation and, excellence. And I think my skills would be a good fit for—" Ethan held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Let's skip the rehearsed speech. I've heard 1,000 versions of it." His blue eyes locked onto hers. "Why do you really want this job?" Madison swallowed. "Because I need it." His eyebrow arched. "Honest. I appreciate that. But need isn't enough. I don't hire people out of pity. I hire people who can keep up." She felt a flicker of irritation cut through her nerves. "I can keep up." "Can you?" He leaned forward slightly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you seem like someone who makes snap judgments based on 30-second interactions." Madison's cheeks flushed. That was—" "Look," he said, his tone shifting to something sharper, more businesslike. "I'm not interested in what you think of me personally. I'm interested in whether you can do the job. My last assistant quit because she couldn't handle the pressure. I work long hours. I expect results, not excuses. I don't tolerate incompetence or emotional outbursts. If you can't handle that, leave now." Madison's pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct told her to stand up, apologize, and walk out. But something else, something stubborn and fierce, kept her planted in the chair. She met his gaze head-on. "I can handle it." Ethan studied her for a long moment. Then he opened a drawer, pulled out a thick stack of documents, and slid them across the desk toward her. "Prove it. These are contracts that need to be reviewed and summarized by end of day. I also need you to coordinate a meeting with 3 department heads, all of whom have conflicting schedules. And there's a presentation due tomorrow morning that needs formatting and proofreading. You have until 6 p.m. Madison stared at the mountain of work. It was easily a full day's worth of tasks, maybe more. And it was already 9:30. She looked up at him. "This is the working interview." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Consider it a trial by fire. If you're still here at 6 with everything completed, we'll talk about a formal offer. If not, well, I'm sure you can find your way out." Madison's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the documents. "Fine." Ethan's smile widened just a fraction. "Good. Caroline will show you to a desk. And Miss Hayes?" She paused at the door, looking back. "Try not to call me arrogant again. At least not to my face." Her cheeks burned as she walked out. The next several hours were a blur of frantic typing, phone calls, and caffeine. Caroline, the assistant who had greeted her earlier, set Madison up at a small desk outside Ethan's office. The space was efficient but impersonal. Just a computer, a phone, and a notepad. Madison dove into the work. The contracts were dense and full of legal jargon, but she forced herself to focus, highlighting key points and typing up concise summaries. The meeting coordination was a logistical nightmare. One department head was only available at 8 a.m., another refused to meet before noon, and the third was out of town until next week. Madison spent 40 minutes on the phone, negotiating and rearranging schedules until she finally found a time that worked for everyone. By 3 p.m., her eyes were stinging from staring at the screen. She hadn't eaten. She'd barely even stood up. But she kept going. The presentation was next. It was a pitch deck for a potential investor, full of charts and data. Madison reformatted the slides, fixed typos, and made sure everything was visually cohesive. At 5:30, she printed the final version and added it to the growing stack of completed work on her desk. At 5:50, she knocked on Ethan's door. "Come in." She stepped inside, arms full of documents. He looked up from his computer, his expression neutral. "Well?" Madison set the stack on his desk. Contract summarized. Meeting scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. Presentation formatted and proofread. Ethan picked up the first document and began reading. Madison stood there, heart pounding, as he flipped through page after page. The silence stretched on, unbearable. Finally, he set the papers down and looked at her. Thorough. Accurate. Efficient. Madison exhaled, relief flooding through her. "Does that mean you're hired?" She blinked. "Really?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "You kept up." "Barely." "But you kept up. That's more than most people manage." A grin tugged at Madison's lips, but she quickly suppressed it. "So, what now?" "Now you go home. Be back here Monday morning at 7:30. "And Miss Hayes?" She paused. "Yes?" "Don't be late." As Madison rode the elevator down to the lobby, exhaustion and exhilaration warred inside her. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She had a job, a real, high-paying job at one of the most powerful companies in the city. But as the doors opened and she stepped out into the cool evening air, one thought lingered in her mind. She was going to be working for Ethan Langford, the man she'd called arrogant, the man who had tested her, pushed her, and somehow, against all odds, hired her. This was either the best decision of her life or the biggest mistake. Only time would tell. Madison's first official day at Langford Enterprises began at 7:15 a.m., 15 minutes earlier than required, because she was terrified of being late. She arrived at the 42nd floor with a travel mug of coffee in one hand and a notebook in the other, determined to prove that Friday's trial run wasn't a fluke. Caroline greeted her with a brisk nod. "Good morning. Mr. Langford is already in. He usually arrives by 6:30. Madison's eyes widened. 6:30? Every day? Caroline's expression was unreadable. Every day. She handed Madison a folder. "Here's your orientation packet. Building access, IT login, employee handbook. Read it when you have time. For now, Mr. Langford has a list of tasks for you." "Of course he does," Madison muttered under her breath. She took the folder and settled at her new desk, a sleek workstation just outside Ethan's office. The glass walls meant she could see him inside, already on a phone call, pacing back and forth like a caged lion. His suit today was navy, perfectly tailored, and his expression was as sharp as ever. Madison opened her email. Sure enough, there was a message from Ethan, sent at 6:45 a.m., with a list of tasks that made her stomach drop. Schedule a conference call with the London office for Wednesday. Compile a report on last quarter's revenue streams. Arrange lunch with Victor Hale, CEO of Meridian Corp. Confirm my attendance at the charity gala on Saturday. Review and edit the memo I've attached. The list went on. Madison took a deep breath, opened her planner, and started prioritizing. The morning passed in a whirlwind. Madison juggled phone calls, emails, and documents, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Every so often, Ethan would emerge from his office with another request, his tone clipped and efficient. "Miss Hayes, I need the quarterly report by noon." "Done. And make sure Victor Hale knows I prefer the downtown location for lunch, not his usual spot uptown." "Got it. One more thing." "Yes?" Smile when you answer the phone. You sound like you're at a funeral. Madison's jaw tightened. Noted, he disappeared back into his office. Madison resisted the urge to throw a stapler at the door. By lunchtime, she was starving and frazzled. Caroline appeared at her desk with a sandwich and a bottle of water. "You'll want to eat fast. He doesn't believe in long lunch breaks." Madison unwrapped the sandwich and took a large bite. "Does he believe in any breaks?" Caroline's lips twitched. "Not really. But you get used to it." "I don't know if I want to get used to it," Madison said, half joking. Caroline's expression softened. "He's demanding, but he's fair. If you do good work, he'll notice. And if you mess up, then he'll notice that too." Madison groaned. The afternoon brought a new challenge. Victor Hale's assistant called to confirm lunch, but Victor wanted to move the meeting to Friday instead of Thursday, which conflicted with another appointment on Ethan's calendar. Madison spent 20 minutes negotiating a compromise, finally settling on a breakfast meeting Thursday morning. When she informed Ethan, he barely looked up from his computer. "Fine. Make sure the reservation is confirmed." "It is. And order the usual." Madison hesitated. "What's the usual?" He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Black coffee. No sugar, no cream. Whole grain toast, scrambled eggs, no butter. Fruit on the side." "Sounds thrilling," Madison muttered. He heard her. The corner of his mouth twitched. "I don't eat for enjoyment, Miss Hayes. I eat for efficiency. Must be a sad life." His eyes flicked to hers, sharp and assessing. "Says the woman who survived on vending machine snacks during her trial day." Madison flushed. "How did I notice things? It's part of the job." He returned his attention to the screen. Dismissed. Madison left his office, heart pounding. He was infuriating, impossible. And yet, there was something about the way he paid attention, really paid attention, that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. Later that afternoon, Madison was formatting a presentation when Ethan's phone rang. She answered automatically. Ethan Langford's office. A smooth male voice came through the line. "Is Ethan available?" "This is Jordan Steele." Madison recognized the name. Jordan Steele was a high-profile investor, someone Ethan met with regularly. "One moment, please." She transferred the call, but not before catching a snippet of the conversation through the open door. "Jordan, what can I do for you?" Ethan's tone was warmer than usual. Relaxed even. "I heard you finally hired a new assistant. How's she working out?" Ethan glanced through the glass wall at Madison. "She's competent." "High praise," Jordan said with a laugh. "That's practically a love letter coming from you. Don't push it." Madison quickly looked down, pretending to focus on her screen, but her cheeks were warm. At 6 p.m., just as Madison was packing up, Ethan appeared at her desk. "You're leaving?" "It's 6, she said carefully. "You told me to be here at 7:30, so I assumed. I also told you I work long hours." Madison's exhaustion turned to frustration. "Are you saying I have to stay late every day?" "I'm saying that if you want to succeed here, you don't watch the clock. You watch the work. And when the work is done," she shot back, "then I leave." "Right." Ethan's expression was unreadable. "Right. But the work is never really done, Miss Hayes." He walked back into his office, leaving Madison standing there, torn between admiration for his work ethic and irritation at his impossible standards. She grabbed her bag and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught one last glimpse of Ethan through the glass walls, still at his desk, still working, as if the rest of the world had stopped existing. She leaned against the elevator wall and sighed. This job was going to be harder than she thought. But somewhere, beneath the exhaustion and frustration, a small spark of determination flickered. She wasn't going to let Ethan Langford break her. If anything, she was going to prove that she could keep up. And maybe, just maybe, surprise him in the process. By the end of Madison's first week, she had developed a routine. Wake up at 6, shower, dress, grab coffee, arrive at the office by 7:15. Dive into the endless stream of emails, calls, and tasks that Ethan generated like a machine. Work through lunch. Stay until 6, sometimes. Later. Go home. Collapse. Repeat. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. Madison discovered that she thrived under pressure. The more Ethan threw at her, the more determined she became to exceed his expectations. And slowly, grudgingly, she began to earn his respect. On Friday afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. "Sit." Madison sat, bracing herself for criticism. Instead, he slid a document across the desk. "This is the investor report you compiled on Wednesday. I presented it this morning." The board was impressed. Madison blinked. "They were?" Ethan nodded. "Your analysis was clear, concise, and accurate. That's exactly what I need." She felt a swell of pride. "Thank you. Don't let it go to your head." He picked up another folder. "There's a gala tomorrow night. I need you to attend." Madison's stomach dropped. A gala? As in, formal event? Black tie? Ethan's expression was neutral. "Yes. I need someone to take notes during conversations, keep track of contacts, and handle any logistical issues that arise. Caroline usually does it, but she's out of town." Madison hesitated. I don't really have anything to wear to a black tie event." Ethan reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sleek black credit card. "Buy something. Expense it to the company." Her eyes widened. "You're serious? Do I look like I'm joking?" "No. You never look like you're joking." His lips twitched. "Exactly. Be ready by 7 tomorrow. I'll send a car to pick you up. And Miss Hayes? Yes. Try not to spill anything on yourself. You'll be representing Langford Enterprises." Madison left his office, equal parts excited and terrified. That evening, she enlisted Chloe's help. The two of them spent hours at a boutique downtown, trying on dresses until Madison finally found one that felt right. A floor-length emerald green gown with a fitted bodice and a flowing skirt. It was elegant, sophisticated, and made her feel like someone who belonged at a high society gala. Chloe whistled. "You look amazing." Madison turned in front of the mirror, barely recognizing herself. "I look like I'm pretending to be someone else." "Fake it till you make it," Chloe said with a grin. "Besides, if Mr. Tall, Dark, and Impossible doesn't notice you in that dress, he's blind." Madison rolled her eyes. "It's not like that." "Sure it's not," Chloe teased. "You've only mentioned him 100 times this week, because he's my boss, and he's infuriating." Chloe smirked. "Infuriating in a handsome, brooding, makes your heart race kind of way?" Madison threw a pillow at her. The next evening, Madison stood in front of her bathroom mirror, applying the final touches of makeup. Her hands were shaking slightly. This was different from sitting at a desk. This was stepping into Ethan's world, a world of wealth, power, and scrutiny. At exactly 7 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Ethan, car is outside." Madison grabbed her clutch and headed downstairs. A sleek black town car waited at the curb. The driver opened the door, and Madison slid inside. Sitting across from her, looking impossibly polished in a black tuxedo, was Ethan. Madison's breath caught. He looked like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, dark hair perfectly styled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan's gaze traveled over her. Slow and assessing. "You clean up well, Miss Hayes." Madison's cheeks warmed. "So do you, Mr. Langford." His lips curved into the faintest smile. "Shall we?" The gala was held at the Grand Bellamy Hotel, a historic building dripping with old-world elegance. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, waiters gliding through the crowd with trays of champagne. Madison felt like she'd stepped into a movie. Ethan placed a hand lightly on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd. The touch was impersonal, professional, but it sent a shiver down her spine. "Stay close," he murmured. "And remember, you're here to observe, not participate." Got it. The evening unfolded in a blur of introductions and conversations. Ethan moved through the crowd with ease, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries, all while maintaining that cool, controlled demeanor. Madison stayed at his side, taking mental notes and occasionally jotting things down in the small notebook she'd tucked into her clutch. At one point, a tall, silver-haired man approached. "Ethan Langford." It's been too long. Ethan's expression didn't change, but Madison sensed a shift in his posture. Slight tension. "Victor. Good to see you." Victor Hale. Madison recognized the name. This was the man they'd had breakfast with earlier in the week. Victor's eyes slid to Madison. "And who's this lovely young woman?" "My assistant." "Madison Hayes." Victor extended a hand. Madison shook it, feeling the weight of his scrutiny. "Assistant," Victor repeated, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "Ethan's assistants keep getting younger and prettier." Madison's smile was polite but strained. Ethan's voice was cool. "Miss Hayes is exceptionally competent." "That's why she's here," Victor chuckled. "I'm sure she is." After Victor walked away, Madison leaned slightly toward Ethan. "He's charming." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He's a shark. Stay away from him." Noted. The rest of the evening passed smoothly until Madison excused herself to the restroom. She was touching up her lipstick when the door opened and another woman entered. Tall, blonde, stunning in a red gown that probably cost more than Madison's entire wardrobe. The woman's eyes flicked over Madison with barely concealed disdain. "You're new." Madison forced a smile. "I suppose I am." The woman leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Let me guess. Ethan's latest assistant." Madison's guard went up. "Yes." The woman laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Good luck with that. He goes through assistants like most people go through coffee. You'll last a month if you're lucky." Madison met her gaze evenly. "I'll take my chances." The woman's smile was cold. "I'm Vanessa Monroe. I used to date Ethan. Just thought you should know." Madison's stomach twisted, but she kept her expression neutral. "Thanks for the heads up." Vanessa leaned in closer, her voice dropping. "He doesn't let people in. Not really. If you're hoping for something more than a paycheck, you're wasting your time." "Then it's a good thing I'm just here for the paycheck," Madison said coolly. Vanessa's smile faltered. She straightened, tossed her hair, and walked out. Madison exhaled shakily. Great. Just great. When she returned to the ballroom, Ethan was waiting near the edge of the crowd. "Everything all right?" "Fine," Madison lied. He studied her for a moment, as if he didn't quite believe her, but didn't press. The car ride home was quiet. Ethan stared out the window, lost in thought. Madison replayed Vanessa's words in her mind. He doesn't let people in. She glanced at him, at the hard lines of his profile, the tension in his shoulders. Maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe Ethan Langford was as unreachable as he seemed. But then he turned, catching her staring. "You did well tonight." Madison's heart skipped. "Thank you." He held her gaze for a beat longer than necessary. Then the car pulled up in front of her apartment building. Ethan's driver opened the door. "Good night, Miss Hayes. Good night, Mr. Langford." As Madison climbed the stairs to her apartment, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. Something small, fragile, but undeniably there. The following Monday, Madison arrived at the office to find a small, elegantly wrapped box on her desk. She frowned, glancing around. Caroline was at her own desk, typing away, and Ethan's office door was closed. Madison picked up the box. There was no card, no note. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a sleek silver pen, the kind that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. Engraved along the side were her initials. M.H. Madison's breath caught. She looked up at Ethan's door, her heart doing an odd little flip. Why would he? Before she could finish the thought, the door opened. Ethan stepped out, his expression as unreadable as ever. "Miss Hayes?" A word. Madison followed him into his office, the pen still in her hand. She held it up. "Did you?" He glanced at it. "You've been using a cheap plastic pen all week. It's inefficient." "This one is better." Madison's lips parted. That's really thoughtful." "It's practical," Ethan corrected. "Don't read into it." But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of warmth that made her think maybe she should read into it. Just a little. The week passed in the usual flurry of meetings, calls, and late nights, but Madison noticed small changes. Ethan started asking her opinion on things. "What do you think of this proposal? How would you handle this situation?" At first, she was hesitant, unsure if he really wanted her input or was just testing her. But when he actually listened, when he took her suggestions seriously, she began to speak up more confidently. One afternoon, they were reviewing a contract together in his office. Madison was sitting across from him, pen in hand, making notes. "I don't think this clause is in our favor," she said, pointing to a section. "It gives them too much leverage if the deal falls through." Ethan leaned forward, studying the document. "You're right." He picked up his phone and called the legal team. "Revise Clause 7. Miss Hayes identified a problem. I want a new draft by end of day." When he hung up, he looked at her. "Good catch." Madison smiled. "Just doing my job. You're doing more than that." The words hung in the air between them. Madison's pulse quickened. She looked down, suddenly self-conscious. That evening, as she was packing up to leave, Ethan appeared at her desk. "I'm ordering dinner. You should stay." Madison hesitated. "I don't want to. You've been staying late all week. It's the least I can do." His tone was casual, but there was something almost vulnerable in the way he said it. Madison found herself nodding. Okay. They ate in his office, Chinese takeout spread across his desk. It was the most informal Madison had ever seen him. Jacket off, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He even smiled once or twice. "So," Ethan said, popping open a container of lo mein, "tell me something about yourself that's not on your resume." Madison raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I've worked with you for 3 weeks, and I know almost nothing about you." She considered. "I have a cat named Mr. Whiskers. He's orange, extremely judgmental, and possibly plotting my demise." Ethan's lips twitched. "Sounds like a typical cat." "What else?" Madison hesitated. "I wanted to be a writer, before I ended up in marketing. Why didn't you?" She shrugged. "Life got in the way. Bills, responsibilities, the usual. But I still write sometimes, just for myself." Ethan nodded slowly. "You should keep doing that." Madison looked at him, surprised. "Really? Really?" He met her gaze. "Don't let the job consume everything. Trust me, it's not worth it." There was something raw in his voice, something that made Madison realize he wasn't just talking about her. He was talking about himself. "What about you?" she asked softly. "What did you want to be before all this?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he answered, "A musician." Madison's eyes widened. "Seriously?" He nodded. "I played piano, classical mostly. My mother loved music. She used to say it was the only language that didn't need translation." "What happened?" He looked away, jaw tightening. "My father happened. He didn't see the value in it." "So I stopped." Madison's chest ached. I'm sorry. Ethan shrugged, but the gesture was stiff. It was a long time ago. They finished eating in companionable silence. As Madison stood to leave, Ethan spoke again. Thank you. For what? For staying. He paused, searching for the right words. For not being afraid of me. Madison smiled. You're not as scary as you think you are, Mr. Langford. He raised an eyebrow. Is that so? She nodded. Underneath all the CEO armor, you're just a guy who eats lo mein and misses playing piano. Ethan's expression softened. Careful, Miss Hayes. You're starting to sound like you understand me. Maybe I do, she said quietly. Their eyes held for a beat too long. Then Madison grabbed her bag and headed for the door. Good night, Mr. Langford. Good night, Madison. She paused. It was the first time he'd called her by her first name. She didn't turn around, but she smiled all the way to the elevator. Over the next few days, something shifted between them. The air felt different. Charged. Madison found herself looking forward to their late-night work sessions, to the moments when Ethan let his guard down, when they talked about things that had nothing to do with spreadsheets or meetings. And Ethan, for his part, seemed lighter. He smiled more. Joked, occasionally. Once, he even laughed at something Madison said. A real, genuine laugh that made her heart stutter. But the elephant in the room was always there, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. The fact that he was her boss. The fact that whatever was growing between them was complicated, maybe even dangerous. One evening, as they were leaving the office together, the elevator doors closed with just the two of them inside. The ride down was silent. But the air between them crackled with tension. Madison stared at the numbers ticking down. 40. 35. 30. She could feel Ethan's gaze on her. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. She turned. Sure. Why did you stay? After that first week, after I pushed you so hard, why didn't you quit? Madison thought about it. Because I don't give up easily. And because, she hesitated. Because you challenged me. No one's ever done that before. Ethan's eyes darkened. You challenge me too. Her breath hitched. I do? More than you know. The elevator stopped. Ground floor. The doors opened, and the moment shattered. Madison stepped out, heart pounding. Ethan followed, his expression once again unreadable. Good night, Madison. Good night, Ethan. This time, she used his first name. And this time, he smiled. The week before Thanksgiving, Langford Enterprises was hit with a crisis. A major deal fell through, investors were pulling out, and the media was circling like vultures. Madison had never seen Ethan so tense. He snapped at people, worked 18-hour days and barely slept. She did her best to keep up, fielding calls, managing schedules, and trying to anticipate his needs before he even voiced them. Late one night, she found him in his office, staring out the window at the city skyline. His tie was gone, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and he looked exhausted. Madison knocked softly on the doorframe. You should go home. Ethan didn't turn. There's too much to do. You've been here since 6 this morning. You're human, Ethan. Even you need rest. He let out a harsh laugh. Human. Right. Madison stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Talk to me. What's going on? He turned, and the look in his eyes was raw. Everything I've built, everything I've worked for, it could all fall apart. Because of one deal? Because it's not just one deal. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. It's a domino effect. If this falls through, other investors lose confidence. Stock prices drop. Projects get canceled. People lose jobs. Madison moved closer. You'll figure it out. You always do. How do you know? Because I've seen you work. I've seen how smart you are, how determined. You don't give up, and you're not alone. You have a whole team, people who believe in you. She paused. including me. Ethan's gaze softened. You believe in me? Madison nodded. I do. Even when you're impossible and infuriating and way too demanding, I still believe in you. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his blue eyes seemed to darken. Madison, I shouldn't say this. Then don't. But he did anyway. You've become more than just my assistant. Madison's heart slammed against her ribs. Ethan, I think about you. More than I should. And it's complicating everything. She should have stepped back. She should have reminded him that this was unprofessional, that he was her boss, that they couldn't cross this line. But instead, she whispered, You're not the only one. His eyes flared. Madison, She reached up, fingertips brushing his jaw. Just stop talking. And then, before either of them could second guess, he kissed her. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It wasn't careful or tentative. It was fierce, desperate. Like he'd been holding back for too long and finally let go. Madison's hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and he responded by lifting her onto the edge of his desk, his hands framing her face, then sliding down to her waist. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Ethan rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea. The worst, Madison agreed, but she was smiling. So was he. They kissed again, slower this time, and Madison felt like the world outside that office had ceased to exist. It was just the two of them, tangled together in the dim light, finally giving in to the pull that had been there from the start. Eventually, they pulled apart. Ethan's thumb brushed across her cheek. What do we do now? Madison's smile was soft. Figure it out. Together. He nodded. Together. That night, Ethan drove her home. The car ride was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet, the kind that settled warm in her chest. When they pulled up outside her building, Ethan walked her to the door. Madison turned, looking up at him. So, we're doing this? Ethan's lips curved. I think we are. She grinned. Just so you know, I'm still going to call you out when you're being impossible. I wouldn't expect anything less. He leaned down, kissing her gently. Good night, Madison. Good night, Ethan. The next morning, Madison floated into the office, unable to stop smiling. Caroline gave her a curious look but said nothing. Ethan was already in his office, on a call. But when he saw Madison, his expression softened. He gave her a small, private smile, one that made her stomach flip. The day passed in a blur of work, but every so often, their eyes would meet through the glass wall, and Madison felt that same electric pull. That afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. Close the door. She did, heart racing. Is everything okay? He stood, walking around the desk. I wanted to give you this. He handed her an envelope. Madison opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. E. She looked up, eyes shining. Ethan, he smiled. I'm not good at this. The emotional stuff. But I wanted you to know. Madison stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. He held her tightly, and for the first time in weeks, she felt completely at peace. That evening, they left the office together, hand in hand. It was risky, maybe even reckless, but Madison didn't care. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. They grabbed dinner at a small Italian restaurant, tucked away in a quiet corner where no one would recognize them. They talked and laughed and shared stories, and Madison realized something. She was falling for him. Not the CEO, not the demanding boss, but the man beneath all of that. The one who played piano and missed his mother and worked too hard because he was afraid of failing. And when Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, she saw the same realization in his eyes. He was falling too. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Madison and Ethan kept their relationship under wraps at the office, but outside of work, they were inseparable. They had dinner at hole-in-the-wall restaurants, took long walks through the city at night, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. Madison learned that Ethan was terrible at cooking, but made excellent coffee, that he had a scar on his left hand from a childhood accident, that he secretly watched old black and white movies when he couldn't sleep. And Ethan learned that Madison sang off-key in the shower, that she was fiercely loyal to the people she loved, and that she had a habit of biting her lip when she was thinking. But keeping the relationship secret was harder than either of them anticipated. At work, they had to maintain a professional distance, which meant no lingering touches, no stolen kisses, no inside jokes in front of Caroline or the rest of the staff. It was exhausting. One afternoon, Madison was in Ethan's office, reviewing a presentation, when he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She froze, glancing at the glass walls. Someone could see. Ethan pulled back, jaw tightening. Right. Sorry. Madison hated the distance that immediately sprang up between them. She hated that they had to hide. That night, over dinner, she brought it up. How long are we going to keep this a secret? Ethan set down his fork. What do you mean? Madison met his eyes. I mean, at some point, people are going to find out. And when they do, it's going to be complicated. He was quiet for a moment. I know. So what do we do? He reached across the table, taking her hand. We deal with it. Together. Madison squeezed his hand. Promise. Promise. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. The following week, Madison was working late when her phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made her blood run cold. Concerns about workplace conduct. She opened it. It was from HR, requesting a meeting with her the next morning. Madison's stomach dropped. Someone knew. She immediately called Ethan. We have a problem. He arrived at her apartment 20 minutes later, his face tight with worry. What happened? Madison showed him the email. Ethan read it, his jaw clenching. They know. Madison nodded, panic rising in her chest. What do we do? Ethan paced, running a hand through his hair. I'll handle it. No. Madison stood. We handle it. Together. Remember? He looked at her, and for a moment she saw fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear. If this gets out, it could ruin your career. My career? Madison crossed her arms. What about yours? I'm the CEO. I can weather it. But you, Ethan, I don't care. His eyes widened. Madison, I don't care what people think. I don't care if it's complicated. I care about you, and I'm not going to let you face this alone. He stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. Okay. We do this together. The next morning, Madison and Ethan walked into the HR office side by side. The HR director, a stern woman named Margaret, sat behind her desk, a thick folder in front of her. Mr. Langford. Miss Hayes. Please, sit. They sat. Margaret opened the folder. It has come to our attention that the two of you may be involved in a romantic relationship. Is this true? Madison's heart pounded. Ethan's voice was steady. Yes, it's true. Margaret's expression didn't change. You're aware that relationships between supervisors and subordinates are complicated. Under company policy. Yes, Ethan said. And you're aware that this puts the company at risk for claims of favoritism, harassment, or misconduct. I'm aware. Margaret looked at Madison. Miss Hayes, Do you feel that you've been coerced or pressured into this relationship in any way? No, Madison said firmly. Absolutely not. And has Mr. Langford ever used his position to— No, Madison interrupted. Never. This relationship is completely consensual, and it started outside of work, not because of work. Margaret studied them for a long moment. Then she sighed. This is highly irregular. Ethan leaned forward. I take full responsibility. If there are consequences, they should fall on me, not Miss Hayes. Margaret raised an eyebrow. How noble. But the policy exists for a reason. She tapped the folder. However, given that both of you are consenting adults, and given Miss Hayes' assurance that there has been no misconduct, we're willing to address this with a formal solution. Which is? Ethan asked. Miss Hayes will be transferred to a different department, reporting to a different supervisor. That way, the conflict of interest is eliminated. Madison's chest tightened. Transferred? Margaret nodded. It's the only way to keep this above board. Madison looked at Ethan. His expression was unreadable, but she saw the tension in his shoulders. She took a deep breath. Okay, I'll transfer. Ethan's head whipped toward her. Madison, it's fine, she said, even though her heart was breaking a little. I can work in a different department. It's not the end of the world. But no buts. She smiled, even though it hurt. We're doing this together, remember? Margaret cleared her throat. Good. I'll have the transfer paperwork drawn up. Miss Hayes, you'll start in the marketing department next Monday. The meeting ended. Madison and Ethan walked out in silence. In the elevator, Ethan finally spoke. I'm sorry. For what? For putting you in this position. Madison shook her head. You didn't. We both made this choice. But still, stop. She turned to face him. I don't regret it. Any of it. Ethan's eyes softened. Neither do I. The doors opened. They stepped out into the lobby, and for the first time in weeks, they didn't have to hide. Ethan reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. Madison smiled. So, what now? Now, Ethan said, we figure it out. Together. Together, Madison echoed. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like everything was going to be okay. Madison's transfer to the marketing department was bittersweet. She missed working directly with Ethan, missed the rhythm they'd developed, the shorthand communication, the way they could read each other with just a glance. But she also loved the freedom of being with him without the weight of secrecy pressing down on them. Her new supervisor, a friendly woman named Angela, welcomed her warmly. Madison, we're so glad to have you. I've heard great things. From who? Madison asked, curious. Angela smiled. Let's just say Mr. Langford speaks very highly of your work. Madison flushed. Of course he does. The work in marketing was different, but engaging. Madison found herself enjoying the creative side, brainstorming campaigns, and crafting copy. And every day at lunch, she and Ethan would meet at a small cafe 2 blocks from the office. It became their ritual. How's the new department? Ethan asked one afternoon, sipping his black coffee. Good. Different, but good. Angela's great. He nodded, but there was something in his expression. Distant. Guarded. Madison set down her sandwich. What's wrong? Nothing. Ethan, he sighed, setting his cup down. I miss working with you. Madison's heart squeezed. I miss it too. But this is better, right? We get to be together without all the complications. He nodded, but the shadow in his eyes didn't lift. That evening, Madison was working late in her new office when her phone buzzed. Ethan, come to my office. Please. She frowned. It was almost 8. Most people had gone home. She took the elevator up to the 42nd floor. Ethan's office was dimly lit, just the desk lamp casting a warm glow. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. Madison stepped inside, closing the door softly. "Hey." He turned. "Hey." She walked over to him. "What's going on?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I hate this." "Hate what?" "Not having you here? Not working with you. I know it's selfish, but He broke off, jaw tightening. Madison reached for his hand. "It's not selfish. I feel the same way. But this is what we have to do. For now." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Madison stepped closer, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Hey, look at me." He did. "We're going to be okay. You and me. We're going to figure this out." Ethan's hands came up to cup her face. "I don't know what I did to deserve you." Madison smiled. "You gave me a job and called me competent. It was very romantic." He laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and kissed her. They stood there, wrapped up in each other, the city glittering below them, and Madison felt that familiar warmth settle in her chest. Everything was going to be okay. A few weeks later, Ethan surprised her. They were having dinner at her apartment. Takeout containers spread across the coffee table, Mr. Whiskers purring contentedly on Ethan's lap. "I have something for you," Ethan said. Madison raised an eyebrow. "Is it another fancy pen?" "Better." He pulled out a small envelope and handed it to her. Madison opened it. Inside were 2 tickets to a piano concert. Her eyes widened. "Ethan," I thought. He smiled, a little sheepishly. I thought maybe it was time I stopped running from it. Music, I mean. "And I want you there with me." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "I'd love to be there." The concert was beautiful. They sat in the darkened theater, hand in hand, as the pianist played Chopin and Rachmaninoff. Madison glanced at Ethan and saw the way his eyes were closed, the way he seemed completely lost in the music. Afterward, as they walked through the city streets, Ethan was quieter than usual. "You okay?" Madison asked. He nodded. I haven't felt that in a long time." "Felt what?" "Peace." Madison squeezed his hand. "Good. You deserve it." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "So do you." She smiled. "I have it. Right here. With you." Ethan pulled her close, kissing her under the glow of the streetlights. And in that moment, everything else, the job, the complications, the uncertainties, all of it faded away. It was just the 2 of them, together. A few months later, Madison was sitting in a conference room, presenting a new campaign to the marketing team. She was confident, articulate, and when she finished, the room erupted in applause. "Great work, Madison," Angela said, beaming. After the meeting, Madison was packing up her laptop when her phone buzzed. "Ethan, heard your presentation was amazing. Proud of you." She smiled, typing back. Madison, "Thanks. Learned from the best." Ethan, "Dinner tonight?" "My place?" Madison, "Can't wait." That evening, Madison arrived at Ethan's penthouse apartment. He greeted her at the door with a kiss and a glass of wine. Dinner was simple but delicious, pasta and salad, and they ate on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. After dinner, Ethan led her inside. There was something different in the air, a kind of nervous energy. "Madison," he took her hand. "Yes?" "I've been thinking. About us. About the future." Madison's heart started to race. "Ethan, what are you? I know we've only been together for a few months, and I know things have been complicated. But I also know that I don't want to do this without you." "Do what?" "Life." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Madison's breath stopped. "I'm not asking you to marry me, not yet. But I want you to know that I'm serious about this. About us." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet. It's a promise that no matter what happens, no matter how complicated things get, I'm not going anywhere. Madison's eyes filled with tears. She took the bracelet, hands trembling, and let him clasp it around her wrist. I'm not going anywhere either. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. They stood there, wrapped up in each other, the future stretching out before them, uncertain, but full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Madison felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Spring arrived in the city with a burst of color. Cherry blossoms lined the streets. The air was warm, and Madison felt like everything in her life was finally, beautifully falling into place. She and Ethan had settled into a comfortable rhythm. They spent weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, visiting art galleries. He introduced her to his small circle of friends, and she introduced him to Chloe, who immediately grilled him about his intentions. If you hurt her, I'll key your car, Chloe warned. Ethan, to his credit, didn't flinch. Understood. Good. Chloe grinned. I like him. One Saturday afternoon, Ethan took Madison to a surprise location. She was blindfolded in the car, laughing as he guided her out. Where are we going? You'll see. When he finally removed the blindfold, Madison gasped. They were standing in front of a beautiful old music hall, the kind with ornate architecture and a marquee that had seen decades of performances. Ethan, what? Come on. He led her inside. The interior was even more stunning. Velvet seats, a grand stage, and in the center of it all, a glossy black grand piano. Madison turned to him, eyes wide. What is this? Ethan smiled, a little nervously. I rented it for the afternoon. I wanted to play for you. Her heart melted. Ethan, you don't have to. I want to. He walked over to the piano and sat down. Madison took a seat in the front row, barely breathing. And then he began to play. The music was achingly beautiful. Soft and melancholy at first, then building into something powerful and hopeful. Madison watched his hands move across the keys, watched the way his entire body seemed to relax, the way the tension he always carried melted away. When he finished, the last note lingering in the air, Madison was crying. Ethan stood, walking over to her. Hey, why the tears? She laughed, wiping her eyes. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. He smiled, pulling her into his arms. I wrote it for you. Madison's breath caught. You did? He nodded. It's called Madison. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. All the love, the gratitude, the overwhelming sense that she had found something rare and precious. That summer, Langford Enterprises announced a major expansion. New projects, new partnerships, and Ethan was at the center of it all. Madison watched from the sidelines, proud of everything he'd accomplished. But with success came pressure. Ethan started working longer hours again, the stress creeping back into his shoulders. Madison did her best to support him, to remind him to eat, to sleep, to take breaks. One evening, she found him in his office at 10 p.m., hunched over his desk. Ethan. He looked up, exhausted. Hey, come on. You're done for the night. I'm not. Yes, you are. She walked over and closed his laptop. You're going to burn out. I'm fine. You're not. She pulled him to his feet. Let's go home. He resisted for a moment, then sighed. Okay. They went back to his apartment. Madison made him tea, and they sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder. Thank you, he murmured. For what? For taking care of me. Madison smiled. Someone has to. He kissed the top of her head. I don't deserve you. Yes. You do. That fall, Madison received an unexpected offer. A major advertising firm wanted to hire her as a senior copywriter. The salary was excellent, the position prestigious. but it would mean leaving Langford Enterprises. She agonized over the decision. On one hand, it was an incredible opportunity. On the other hand, meant leaving the company where she and Ethan had met, where their story had begun. She talked to Ethan about it over dinner. "I don't know what to do." He took her hand. "What do you want to do?" Madison hesitated. "I don't want to leave. But I also don't want to pass up a great opportunity because of you, because of us." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I think you should take it." Madison blinked. "What?" "You're an amazing writer, Madison. You deserve to do work that challenges you, that excites you. And if that's at another company, then you should go. But no buts." He squeezed her hand. "I'll still be here. We'll still be us." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." So she took the job, and true to his word, Ethan was there every step of the way. He celebrated her first big campaign, listened to her vent about difficult clients, and reminded her how talented she was on the days she doubted herself. Their relationship deepened. They talked about the future, about what they wanted, where they saw themselves in 5 years, 10 years. And slowly, carefully, they built something solid, something real. One evening, a year after they'd first met, they were back in the elevator at Langford Tower. Madison had come to meet Ethan for dinner. The elevator doors closed, and they were alone. "Remember the first time we were in this elevator?" Madison asked. Ethan smiled. "How could I forget? You called me arrogant." "You were arrogant." "I was confident," he corrected. Madison laughed. "Sure, let's go with that." He pulled her close. "For what it's worth, you were right. I was arrogant. But you changed that. You changed me." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "You changed me too." The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened. But before they stepped out, Ethan said, "Madison Hayes." "Yes." "Ethan Langford? Will you marry me?" Madison's heart stopped. He wasn't holding a ring. He wasn't on one knee. But his eyes were sincere, his voice steady, and she knew he meant every word. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." He kissed her, and the elevator doors closed again, cocooning them in their own little world. And as the elevator climbed back up, Madison thought about everything that had led them here, the chance encounter, the arguments, the late nights, the laughter, the love. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Every single moment. 6 months later, Madison stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the delicate lace veil that framed her face. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant, ivory silk that flowed to the floor. Chloe stood beside her, eyes glistening. "You look amazing." Madison smiled, her heart fluttering with nerves and excitement. "I can't believe this is really happening." "Believe it. You're about to marry the love of your life." And for once, Chloe's teasing tone was replaced with genuine warmth. The ceremony was held in a small garden venue, intimate and beautiful. White roses, string lights, and a handful of their closest friends and family. As Madison walked down the aisle, she locked eyes with Ethan. He stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but it was the look on his face that made her breath catch. Pure, unguarded love. When she reached him, he took her hands. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "So are you," she whispered back. The officiant began, and Madison barely heard the words. All she could focus on was Ethan, the man who had challenged her, frustrated her, and ultimately captured her heart. When it was time for vows, Ethan went first. "Madison, when I met you, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought success was measured in deals closed and profits earned. But you showed me something different. You showed me that the best things in life can't be quantified. You challenged me to be better, to be softer, to let people in. And I'm standing here today because you didn't give up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. I promise to support your dreams, to laugh with you, to hold you when things get hard, and to love you with everything I have, for the rest of my life." Madison's eyes were streaming with tears. She took a shaky breath. "Ethan, I called you arrogant in an elevator, and somehow, that terrible first impression turned into the greatest love story of my life. You've taught me that confidence isn't arrogance, that strength doesn't mean you can't be vulnerable, and that love is worth fighting for. I promise to stand by your side, to remind you to take breaks, to drag you away from your desk when you're working too hard, and to love you fiercely, always, for the rest of my life." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Ethan pulled Madison close and kissed her, and the small crowd erupted in cheers. The reception was perfect. Laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Jordan Steele, Ethan's best friend, stood up with a glass of champagne. "I've known Ethan for 15 years, and I've never seen him as happy as he is with Madison. She's the only person who can make him laugh, make him relax, and make him admit when he's wrong." He paused, grinning. Which, let's be honest, is a miracle. Everyone laughed, including Ethan. "So here's to Madison and Ethan. May your love continue to grow, and may Ethan finally learn to cook something other than toast." More laughter. Madison and Ethan shared a look, and she squeezed his hand under the table. Later, as they swayed together on the dance floor, Ethan whispered, "Happy?" Madison rested her head on his shoulder. "So happy." "Good, because I plan on making you this happy for the next 60 years. She laughed. "Only 60? He smiled. "Fine. 70. Deal." They danced under the stars, surrounded by the people they loved, and Madison felt like her heart might burst. This was it. This was everything she'd ever wanted, and more. As the night wound down, Madison and Ethan slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. The lights twinkled above them, and the sounds of the party faded into the background. "Thank you," Ethan said softly. "For what?" "For taking a chance on me." Madison cupped his face in her hands. "Thank you for taking a chance on me." They kissed, slow and sweet, and Madison thought about how far they'd come. From a chance encounter in an elevator to this, a lifetime together. "So, what now?" Madison asked. "Now," Ethan said, pulling her close, "we live happily ever after." And they did. Madison continued to thrive in her career, writing campaigns that won awards and earned recognition. Ethan expanded Langford Enterprises, but he also learned to balance work with life, to take time for the things that mattered: music, travel, and most importantly, Madison. They bought a house with a big backyard for Mr. Whiskers, who ruled the household with an iron paw. They traveled the world, from Paris to Tokyo to the beaches of the Caribbean. They fought, of course, because no relationship is perfect, but they always came back to each other, always chose love over pride. Years later, Madison would look back on that day in the elevator and smile. The day she called a stranger arrogant and had no idea that stranger would become her everything, because sometimes the best love stories start with the worst first impressions. And sometimes, the person who challenges you the most is the person you're meant to spend your life with. Madison and Ethan's story wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, messy, complicated, and beautiful. And it was theirs. As they stood on the porch of their home one evening, watching the sunset, Ethan wrapped his arms around Madison from behind. "Any regrets?" he murmured. She leaned back against him, smiling. "Not a single one." "Good, because I have one more surprise." Madison turned, eyebrows raised. "Oh?" Ethan pulled out a small envelope. She opened it. Inside were 2 tickets to a piano concert. But this time, the performer listed was Ethan Langford. Madison's eyes widened. "You're performing?" He nodded, looking almost shy. "I thought it was time. And I want you in the front row." Madison threw her arms around him. "I'll be there. Always." And she was. Not just that night, but every night. Every moment. Every step of the way. Because that's what love is. Showing up. Choosing each other. And building a life. One beautiful, imperfect day at a time. And as the sun set over their home, casting everything in golden light, Madison knew with absolute certainty. This was her happily ever after. 5 years into their marriage, Madison and Ethan had built a life that felt like a dream. Their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and the occasional chaos that came with their now expanded family. Mr. Whiskers had been joined by a golden retriever named Benny, who had far too much energy and a habit of stealing socks. Madison had published her first book, a novel she'd written in stolen moments between campaigns and client meetings. It was a story about second chances and unexpected love, and it had become a surprise bestseller. Ethan had been her biggest champion, throwing her a launch party and buying copies for everyone he knew. Meanwhile, Ethan had stepped back slightly from the day-to-day operations of Langford Enterprises, delegating more and focusing on passion projects. He'd started a foundation that provided music education to underprivileged kids, and he performed benefit concerts twice a year. Madison never missed one. One autumn afternoon, they were sitting on their back porch, coffee mugs in hand, watching Benny chase leaves in the yard. "Can you believe it's been 5 years?" Madison mused. Ethan smiled. "Feels like 5 minutes. And also like a lifetime." She laughed. "That's exactly it." He turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about that day in the elevator?" "All the time. What if I hadn't said anything? What if you just ignored me?" Ethan reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't think I could have ignored you. Even then, there was something about you. Something that pulled me in." Madison's heart swelled. "I felt it too, even though I thought you were arrogant." "I was arrogant," he admitted with a grin. "But you fixed that." She laughed. "I didn't fix you. I just loved you enough that you felt safe being yourself." Ethan's gaze softened. "And that's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined. The world around them peaceful and bright. Life wasn't always easy. There were hard days, stressful projects, and moments when they didn't see eye to eye. But they always came back to this, to each other, to the love they'd built, brick by brick, moment by moment. Later that evening, as they were getting ready for bed, Madison's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. "What?" Ethan asked. "Chloe just texted. She wants to know if we're free for brunch this weekend. She says she has big news." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Think she's engaged?" Madison grinned. "Definitely." They made plans to meet Chloe and her boyfriend, and as Madison set her phone down, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. For this life, for this love, for every twist and turn that had brought her here. She climbed into bed, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "I love you too," Madison whispered back. And as she drifted off to sleep, safe and warm in the arms of the man who had once been a stranger in an elevator, she thought about how beautifully unpredictable life could be. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one chance encounter, one decision to speak up instead of staying silent, and everything changes. That night, Madison dreamed of cherry blossoms and piano music, of laughter and love, of a future that stretched out endlessly before them. And when she woke the next morning, Ethan was already up, making coffee in the kitchen, Benny wagging his tail at his feet. She watched from the doorway, smiling. This was her life, and it was perfect. Not because it was flawless, but because it was real, because it was hers. And because every single day she got to wake up next to the person she loved most in the world. Madison walked over, wrapping her arm